that's a good point. Let me go back to that. My motivation where this came from to do an Ironman was, I said after I turned 40, I started exercising, but I was doing things like, P90X, which is a great program. Like I did that intensely for the 3 months, and I did notice my body change. But then after that, John, I did nothing. I just like, okay, I'm done. So then I took like a year off. I'm like, that doesn't work. So I did it for a few years of just doing, spurts of exercise. And then I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So at 43, a buddy might say, look, I know what's wrong, what's missing with you. You're very competitive. You need to compete to motivate you to train. And I said, great, that's a great idea. What do you recommend? And he's like, you need something crazy because you're crazy. You're like, you need to do Ironman. I'm like, okay, what is that? I'll do it. It was just, that's how it came about. And so I was 43 when I said, I'm gonna do an Ironman. And there's another story there that I didn't know how to swim. I didn't have a bike. I've never run a competition. So it took a lot to get to do that.
So when you say you didn't know how to swim, do you mean like you didn't know how to swim at all, or you didn't know how to swim like competitively or like correctly?
I mean, you put me in a pool and I could doggy paddle to the other side.
Hmm.
But that whole, swimming like a proper stroke, I couldn't put my head in. I couldn't breathe underwater, bilateral breathing. I could tread water like doggy paddle, but that's it. So I went in to get lessons. I joined a master's program here in our community, and I showed up for the master's program. And in order to be there, you had to be able to do 100 meters in 2 minutes. And so she's like, "Let me see your pace time." I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna doggy paddle to the other side in 2 minutes. Like it's then it doesn't work that way. She goes, "Oh no, you can't be here. This is the wrong program for you." I said, "Well, I just need to learn like basics 101." So the coach said for me to wait. There was another class after the master's program that I could fit into. And so I waited for an hour, sitting. I looked like such a day, just sitting on the deck, waiting, cold. And then an hour goes by. The next class comes in, and I'm like, this is a problem. There's these 10 and 12-year-olds coming in, right? So yeah, so I trained with these guys for about 9 months with these 10 and 12-year-olds to learn how to swim, and it took me about 3 months to just learn bilateral breathing. That simple little thing. It's not simple, but that took a lot to actually do properly. And then about another month, so about the 4 month mark, I actually beat a kid in a speed race.
Wow.
And I was just so excited, like I beat a 10-year-old. It was like, what a day.
It's like the episode of Seinfeld when Kramer went in the karate class with all
Yes,
the kids.
the karate.
Yeah.
That's it. That's exactly. I literally was that guy.
That's
Right? And
incredible.
the kid said, "You beat me." I'm like, "I'm supposed to. I'm bigger than you.
So my arms are twice as long as yours, right?
I'm supposed to." These kids weren't like novice. They wasn't like their first year. They weren't 101. They were a little further along. They were actually very competitive. So
Wow. And that's incredible because I think when you talk to a lot of people and they hear an Ironman just sounds completely insane. Like even running a marathon sounds completely insane to the average
yeah,
person. And then like when you talk about that you started from essentially your starting point was like sedentary normal dude who didn't really do
nothing.
anything in your 40s was your starting
Yeah.
point that you were still able to do this. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, Jonathan, on the run side, I have a neighbor who runs a lot of marathons. So I went to him, said, "Hey, can you give me a few pointers just to get started?" He goes, "Well, let's just see where you're at. So let's just do, I was at his house. He goes, go out 15 minutes. I want you to do walk for a minute, jog for a minute. 15 minutes, come back, and let's see where you're at." So it was walk, jog, not even walk, run, walk, jog. I came back at 50 minutes. I was panting. I'm like, I was almost near tears. I'm like, oh my God, that was painful. How am I ever going to run a marathon? He goes, don't worry, we'll get you there. And sure enough, over time you build up that volume and you get there. But well, yeah, my fitness level, even though I was thin, was horrendous. Like it was just non-existent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's cool. That's I mean you did the path and you made it uh on your own. Well, with help obviously,
yeah,
but with you still took the initiative and put in all the work to get there. And I think a lot of people see that space because they're like I'm over here and like you're like off the page seemingly. And the fact that you can get there
yeah.
no matter where your starting point is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what helped, Jonathan, was knowing my goal was that Ironman and having a clear path that, each year I knew what my milestones were, and having coaches that helped me put together a regiment of, this is the training schedule, and that kept it really simple. Every day I had two workouts, and I tried not to miss one. Because if I missed one in the morning, it means I had to double up in the evening. That was my psychology. That was my punishment. Oh, now I have a double in the evening. So I always tried to maintain my schedule, and that looked like, some days it was run day, right? And I'd look outside and it's pouring rain. I'm like, it's run day, and I'd go out in the rain, and you do it. You get it done, because an Ironman doesn't get canceled for rain. Right? The only thing that would cancel, I believe, is lightning. But that's it. So you know what? If it's raining, off I go. But that only worked because I knew I had to maintain my schedule to hit my marks.
Wow. So you did mention a little bit about this, but what is kind of the training process for the Ironman? Like, how do you train for an Ironman? You said if you have a run day or a bike day, what would a week look like? Do you have like a periodized program? Does it like move
Yeah.
forward in different? Give us a kind of an overview of what that looks like in the
Yeah.
weeks leading up
So
to, and then maybe before. Like, I guess there'd probably be two phases, maybe, right? There might be a prep phase, like if you're leading up to a competition, then just general training, maybe.
Yeah, so knowing there's a race coming, then you work backwards from the race, because you do need to, the last few weeks you ease up a little bit, right?
Yep.
But up until there, it is what you said, like it's periodization, it's loading up. But in a week, like I said, there's usually about two workouts per day, about 14 to 18 workouts, depending on also my schedule, because obviously I'm working as well.
14 to
Luckily
18
during
weekly, you're saying?
weekly.
Okay.
Yeah, weekly. And I'll describe that. But luckily, during that time, I had a like my job. I was very independent, so I could do a midday run. It was very flexible. I wasn't working, like 50 hours a week like these days. So I had that flexibility. Um, so what it looks like then, it was about three runs a week, 3 to 4 runs a week, about three bikes a week. And when I say the runs, some are longer, some are shorter, obviously, depending on where I'm at. The bikes, the longer bike rides, the 4 or 5 hour bike rides, usually on the weekends. Probably do one Saturday and Sunday, and then some shorter ones throughout the week. And then visiting the gym every other day, visiting the gym, and then doing legs, arms, swimming 3 times a week. And then interspersed in there would be, I did yoga as well, that to keep everything limber. I kept doing some calisthenics, some kick, jump training, just a bunch of things. Even did a little bit of kickboxing. Had a little video routine that I would follow. Uh, there were scheduled ones, like the swim, bike, run are fixed, but then the yogas and all that, it would depend on, okay, today I feel like, oh, I need a little bit of yoga, I need, or more weight training, so those were put in there. So on average I'm doing at least 3 hours of training every day.
Wow. And when
So that's going up. Yeah.
and when we're
Sorry.
talking about the bikes, the runs, the swims, how what are we talking about in terms of like intensity and distance duration for these?
A little bit of everything, right? The runs. So even though the goal for the run is 42 kilometers, the longest run I ever did in training, I think, was about, I want to say 34. I never did a full 42 in training. And there was a psychology to that. I mean, if you ever, you probably know about the like training methodology. Like doing a 42-kilometer training, then it affects my ability to train the next day. I need a rest day for a couple of days. So I didn't want to miss a training day, because it was 7 days a week training. So I couldn't maintain that kind of volume in training. So maybe near the end, those last month, I started to get my volume up past 25 to 35, in that range. But normally my runs are about 20 to 25 kilometers. If I'm doing a shorter one, like let's say I have an hour, I'm doing a 10 to 12K sprint, and I mean like an all-out 10K. And that's, like I said, for my shorter intensity, like a hit training. The bikes, if I'm doing a shorter ride, I probably would do on the trainer, as opposed to going out. If I only have an hour, then that, because that could be much more intense on the trainer. If I'm doing a long ride, obviously I'm going to go out on the roads. I used to take the bike out up to near like past Canada's Wonderland, and go from there north of Weston. because
No
it's
one, no
quieter
one who
that way.
listens to this podcast knows where that is. very,
Oh,
very few people.
fair enough. God, fair enough. So I used to go out. Like I'm in the city, so I used to take the bike out, throw in the car, and drive out to the country. So it's just a quieter area. But these days now, I just ride from here because I realize the time it takes to get the bike, go up there, takes me about an hour. I could just bike there in the same time frame. Like,
Mhm.
meaning not that I'm as fast as the car, but the prep time to get the bike ready and installed, I could just start riding,
Exactly. It's like
right?
driving to the airport versus taking the train.
So that was it. What else as far as training? Run, bike, swim had to be scheduled because that you have to actually book a time, book a lane. So that had a lock time, and I always swam at 8:30 p.m. At night at our local club here, and that was with our training club. Oh, and that was the other thing. I joined right from the beginning. I joined a training club, the Toronto Triathlon Club, and that really helped because I was so novice. I didn't even know how novice I was until I got to experience this club and actually joining their group rides, going away to training weekends with them, and really like even the clothes I was wearing was wrong, and I had it that it didn't matter. Excuse me, but it does matter. Like the clothes you wear makes a difference. And I can have a few stories on that as well. But yeah, I was really, really novice. I didn't have the right language. I remember going to my first training club up in Collingwood, and it was raining on the first day. This is literally the first season I started out, and it's, oh, I guess we're not riding today. It's raining, and everyone looked at me like, "What are you, an idiot? Of course we're riding."
It's just a little rain. The rain's not gonna hurt
It's
you.
great. I'm just so like amateur. Anyway, but it's just funny. It is what it is. Be well to go through that.
Wow. So I think I want to backtrack a little bit to when you were talking about your training, and I think I want to interject my own opinion here for a second. And this is
Yeah,
one thing that everybody gets wrong about training, and you said it's very very important. Like you're doing 42K in your competition, you never actually did a 42K outside of competition. This is
no,
something that is no matter what type of training you are doing. If you are doing powerlifting, you almost never max out in the gym. You max out in competition. If you are doing a
there you
ultra
go.
distance event, you do not do the full event or in the
Nice.
gym. You save that for competition because it
Yeah,
is a very high fatigue demand to do this. And
exactly,
if you do it, it will create a very large recovery problem that will affect your next day of training, which will then affect your
exactly,
next day of training, and it's just a domino effect. The idea of effective training is each workout builds on the previous one. You want to give yourself just
exactly.
enough stress to where your body adapts to, but to where you're still back to baseline by the next workout. Your baseline is just slightly higher. If your baseline didn't go up, or if it went down, which is what happens when a lot of people just train way too much in one workout or up front, especially novices when they start out because their baseline is essentially nothing, it
Yeah,
burns them out real quickly. If you don't have the drive and you don't have the
exactly.
mentality, it burns you out very quickly. And on top of that, if you're looking to get superior athletic performance results, that's also the wrong way to train. I just wanted to
Yeah.
interject my own experience there having
That's perfect. Yeah, exactly, Jeff. I mean, I also, because of the who I am, I mean, the kind of person I am, I like in my industry, I didn't mention that I'm in the insurance industry. I'm considered, from a knowledge level, one of the experts in the industry that other financial advisors come to. So that level of being an expert in my role, I brought that over into this training, and I really needed to know everything about, what it takes to become an Ironman. So during the course of my training, I actually became a certified Ironman coach. I actually took the program, I did all the certifications, did what are the NCCP, what is it,
Are you talking about the
the
NASM or the
coaching here?
NSA? What
Yeah, the Ontario coaching designation. I did that as well. So I did all of that just for my own. I'm not going to train anybody, but for my own knowledge. So all this stuff, tapering. Tapering doesn't mean you stop. Tapering means you ease up so that you reserve some of that for the race. So all of that, nutrition. I mean, nutrition was such a big. It's almost a separate course. Like there's swim, bike, run, nutrition is how a lot of triathletes talk about it, and you got to get that right because a lot of we call it bonking because we're out there for so long, 10 to 15 hours, that if you don't get nutrition right or if you overdo it or underdo it, you can bonk. And just you're done for the race and you don't complete. So that was very conscious of not having that happen. So yeah, so that's another big one too.